Well, greetings, poetry lovers. And it's your intrepid professor again, here to talk to you about the sonnet. As we begin our conversations this week about poetic forms, since the sonnet is the most popular, there are the most examples of the sonnet, according to scholars anyway, of any other type of poem, when we talk about traditional or received forms. And then Shakespeare is probably the best known purveyor of sonnets in the English language, because the poem that we're going to look at today here is Sonnet 130. It is one from his collection of 154 sonnets that first were published together in 1609. Okay, so what I wanted to talk to you about today is how this is a marvelous representative sample of the English sonnet, and what makes it so great is that among the things is the fact that Shakespeare is sort of throwing shade at other sonneteers who spend a good deal of their poetic time making unrealistic and at times ridiculous comparisons between the various attributes, for the most part physical attributes, of the women that they are using as their subjects, that they're idolizing, and so forth, and the rest of the world. So the woman that he is talking about here is so Sonnet 127 begins what scholars call the Dark Lady sonnets, and so it is Shakespeare who is either addressing or writing about as the subject a dark-skinned woman. So she's either of African descent, maybe Southeast Asian, as in perhaps from India or somewhere of that nature. But in any case, she is nothing like the basically white women that other sonneteers are writing about. Okay, so the physical attributes that were much prized in Elizabethan England, and before that, after that, okay. Would be pale skin, okay, which is an indication of your social status. So, somebody that has a tan, we assume that they're outside working or spending a lot of their time outside, which again was just not prized. Blonde hair was seen as something like an ideal. Red lips, red cheeks, for blushing and all this sort of thing. So these are the comparisons that most sonneteers are making, and Shakespeare is going to basically reduce all of these to nothing in favor of his discussion of the woman that he idolizes, loves, takes as his subject of the poem. So let's go ahead and read through here Shakespeare's Sonnet 130. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hair be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. Okay, so as we look at this sonnet as a form, it is the classic English sonnet. So not like the Italian sonnet, the Petrarchan sonnet, which is arranged formally as an octave followed by a sestet. The octave typically rhyming A B B A, and then the sestet being some variation of C D C D C D or C D E C D E, something of that nature. The arrangement of the argument then is that the octave contains the first part of the argument or the observation perhaps made by the poet that then the sestet addresses. Okay, so Because Italian is composed of so many words that rhyme because of the number of vowel endings. Okay, it then provides more rhyming opportunities than English does. English is a relatively rhyme-poor language, and so when Henry Howard goes to Italy as an ambassador or emissary of Henry VIII, he's a poet. He's hanging out with other poets there. He sees this incredible new kind of poetic form that's making an appearance and brings it back to England and then starts to experiment with it. So if you think about the change in language or the change in rhyming, it's as though so someone from England goes to Africa and hears this great new music, but it's being played by instruments that are not available, say, in the same form or what have you, as would be in England. So you've got to come back, and in order to try to make a similar type of music, you've got to use makeshift instruments. So this is what Howard and then ultimately Sir Thomas Wyatt is who really helps to shape this new form where we've got then 3 quatrains. Okay, so 4-line stanzas that are rhyming A, B, A, B, then C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, and then the concluding couplet G, G. So that preference for the couplet really comes, or the concluding couplet really comes from Henry Howard, and then the whole form sort of comes together at the hand of Sir Thomas Wyatt, who most critics say was a superior poet to Henry Howard. But back then, like, almost everybody's writing poetry. Okay, so then in the hands of Shakespeare, he takes the form and turns it into a work of art. Okay, so let's take a look at how this thing shakes out. This is super straightforward. The rhyme scheme here, then, and I'm going to go ahead and crank the LED light on, see if I can get a little bit better lighting here. Okay, so sun, red, done, head. Okay, A, B, A, B, and then white cheeks, delight, reeks. So then it's C, D, C, and then D. No sound, go ground, and we're at E, F, E, F, and then rare and compare, G, and G. So let's take a look at how this thing is structured. So in the beginning, Shakespeare is again taking a crack at some of the points of comparison that are being made by other sonneteers. All right, so if the sonneteers then are using the simile as one of their primary devices for comparison, we know that that's the explicit comparison between two seemingly unlike things. Then even the idea that a mistress' eyes are as bright as the sun, or as bright as stars, or whatever it happens to be, clear as the sun, something like that. He's saying this is not happening for the woman he's describing, again, because we said that she has dark eyes and is dark-skinned with dark, presumably curly hair. Okay. So then coral is far more red than her lips red. So notice we've got an array then of visual imagery. Okay, so the eyes, the lips, okay, the comparison of the color of snow to the woman's breasts, and again we already talked about the skin tone, and then if hairs are wires, black wires grow on her head. So we've got the predominance of the visual imagery, although you do have some implied tactility here with the snow and with the wires of the hair. So the idea then is that with respect to things like the hairs, if the hairs be wires, so a common comparison would be that if blonde hair is seen as sort of an ideal, then the comparison between the hair and, like, say, beaten gold. Okay, so gold wires like you might have on a harp played by an angel type of thing. Okay, so here we are. The period ends the quatrain, and so here's that first element of comparison. So he shifts from a saying, here's what the woman that I'm writing about that I idolize looks like, okay? And then he kind of pulls away and says, I've seen roses damasked red and white. So we're still in the visual image. And so damasking is to make like prints of it. So this dark-skinned woman, you would have a much harder time seeing a blush on her cheeks or a redness, which would be indicative of health, or maybe, the blush of modesty, or whatever it happens to be, okay? And then, so from that, then we go to the olfactory image, okay? And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath from my mistress reeks. So not only do we have that olfactory image, but we also then have this understatement, okay, right? I mean, who's in what world does breath smell better than perfume? Okay, so then he's also engaging in a little verbal irony here, right? Okay, so period ends the second quatrain. So he shifts to now we've got the auditory image. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. Okay, and now back to the visual, and then we also sort of edge into what we might call the ethereal. I grant I never saw a goddess go. Okay, so if you've seen a goddess, maybe it's one in a painting or something, but it's never seen one up close and personal. My mistress, when she walks, as in goddesses we think of as being angelic, they're up in heaven and this sort of thing, right? She treads on the ground. All right. So, if we're just taking a look at the images, and so I think that one of the reasons that that Shakespeare makes the image clusters here so visual driven is because men are generally driven by looks, okay, by visual imagery. And so this is why he takes this on so heavily, okay? And of course, walking into the business of the tactility and the olfactory and this sort of thing is again his nod to the unrealistic comparisons that are being made by other sonneteers. So now, as is characteristic of the English sonnet, although Shakespeare does express a preference for the volta or the turn occurring in line 9, which is where it occurs in the for the most part in the Italian sonnet. So the volta is happening down here in line 13. Remember, we talked about words like however and but and yet and so forth as being indicative of where the turn occurs. And so listen to how fabulous this is. He just mentioned the goddess, yes, and he not only shifts. So this is a display of something like irritation with the way the sonneteers that he's satirizing in a certain kind of way make their comparisons. But you think that if he were overrun by emotion here, okay, that what he's really saying is by God, okay. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare. One of the beautiful things about the poem is the double meanings that make an appearance here in terms of the word choice here at the end. So when he says, I think my love, okay, not only does love here mean the woman that he is talking about, but his love for her, okay, as being rare, okay? So whatever is within this woman is the thing that is the source of her uniqueness. And that source of uniqueness then engenders in him a source of unique love. His love for her is rare, presumably because it is not based on looks alone. It's not based on superficial things, but on deep down things, okay? And so then he says, as any she belied with false compare. So the word belied means, quite literally, misrepresented, okay? And so he is suggesting that the other poets are actively misrepresenting the women that they're writing about, and by using the word belied, It also suggests then that with attention on the word lie, as in to tell a falsehood. So it's happening on a couple of different levels. Okay, so like I said, this is a nice example of the sonnet form. We have the shifts between quatrains. Then, when we take a look at sonnets 60 and 72 by Shakespeare, these are sonnets where the thematic shifts between quatrains is much more pronounced. Here, the shifts are happening more subtly, just in the way that he is arranging the visual imagery. And we could talk about some of the things that are happening here metaphorically. But I think the visual imagery is a lot more interesting, especially because of the things I mentioned earlier about how visually oriented men are in general. So, all right. So that's the and I'm not going to unpack this in terms of the metrical patterns or anything like that. But you'll notice here that none of the high-flown sort of Elizabethan language is anywhere in this poem. And so just to give you an example, I'm going to read you just a quick excerpt from Thomas Watson's 1581 poem, Hecatompathia. Okay, so here's how it opens. Hark you that list to hear what saint I serve. Her yellow locks exceed the beaten gold. Her sparkling eyes in heaven a place deserve. Her forehead high and fair of comely mold, which means beautiful. Her words are music all of silver sound. Her wit so sharp as light can scarce be found. Each eyebrow hangs like iris in the skies. Her eagle's nose is straight of stately frame. Now, I don't know about you, but I mean, to have your nose compared to an eagle's beak seems a little bit out of bounds there. On either cheek a rose and lily lies. Her breath is sweet perfume or holly or holy flame. Her lips more red than any coral stone. Her neck more white than aged swans yet moan. Okay, so I'm not going to read the rest of the poem, but just notice how close he is to. So it's almost as though he had this exact poem in mind. And there are some other poems that I could point to that engage in the same kind of hyperbolic comparison. But in any case, I hope that this helped to make sense of how the form helps to accentuate or helps the poet deliver an argument. And of course, if you have questions, just reach out to me. Talk to you later.